right now. I usually work alone. This is the first time I've had a moderator attached to me, and we're really close, but we're not bosom buddies. Well, we slept together once. Once doesn't count. It's like at camp, it doesn't count. Point being, I usually work as single, so this could go catastrophic, amazingly wrong. So
and that's what I'm hoping for. So, but what I wanted to do, I wanted to run this like you ever watch the Inside the Actors Studio? Okay, well, I want to, right, this should be fun. So I want to run this like inside. So I want to run this inside the writer's studio.
I expect more fawning if you're going to do that.
So let me do the proper introduction first. Our guest tonight.
I'll bring to the table if you need it.
Our guest tonight, perhaps you know him for his work in comics. He had several highly successful series on his own, created on his own, under his own rather uniquely named imprint called Joe's Comics. He worked on some controversial stories featuring some very popular and known characters. He's had a lot of success in comics, and maybe to those people across the ocean might not know this, but he's had success outside of comics as well. And because of that, we want to cover so many aspects of the person sitting next to me. I'd like to introduce Mr. Joe Straczynski. Now, Joe, I want to go through various aspects. And I have a lot of notes here that I'd like to take you through. I'm sorry that I don't have it on cue cards, but unfortunately I didn't get a chance to get that in time. Let's start.
Anybody with a gun? Anybody at all? Just check.
Let's start earlier in your career. As a matter of fact, we noticed here that you were born in New Jersey, which, again, we're not holding that against you, but it seems rather unique to be born there, but then also you traveled around so much. Why were you bouncing around so much early in your life?
Well, growing up, I was born in Jersey, and we moved every 6 months to a different city, state, town, from New Jersey to California to Texas to Chicago. My father had a unique economic philosophy. Blow into town, run up a lot of bills and split. So guys would show up with bills or badges in the morning. That night the U-Haul would show up. We'd take all our furniture, which is very lightweight, meant to be folded up, toss it in the U-Haul and go somewhere else. So we moved 21 times in my first 17 years. Went to a bunch of different grade schools, 4 different high schools, 4 different colleges. And that's what kind of got me into writing, though, because even though every 6 months the neighborhood was different and the curriculum was different, and the school was different, the kids were different, the books in the library were always the same. So I could be on page 19 of R's for Rocket in Matawan, New Jersey, move to Kankakee, Illinois, go to the library, same book, same cover, and pick up where I left off. And that's kind of how I fell in love with words.
Well, thank you. And then now we get you to your college years, and you're in San Diego University. And at that particular point, you decide to get dabbling in radio. And in that case, you started to do some writing there. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I did radio dramas for Alien Worlds. I also was an on-air critic for KSDO News Radio San Diego for several years, which was great because I got to be a theater critic and go to plays constantly. And if you want to learn about language, you go to see plays. And I did a bunch of radio dramas for Alien Worlds, for Mutual Radio Theater. I created a radio company of my own, Airstage Theater. Again, I was in love with the work of Norman Corwin, who, if you know him at all, he was the foremost radio drama writer of his period, above Art Schoberg or above Orson Welles, everybody. And I wanted to sort of model myself on him a little bit, so I did radio drama for several years.
Okay. Then also, they looked like you had a point in your career where you actually started working in newspapers as well?
Yeah, I've had more careers. I blow them up consistently. Yeah, I started, first thing I ever sold was an article to the San Diego Reader for $25. I was 17. In fact, I have that check framed with a check from not long ago. I just sold a script to Spielberg's office for $1 million. $25? $1 million. Just to show you, so you know where you are, but also where you've been. And so I also began writing for the San Diego Reader, for the San Diego Union Tribune, the LA Times Herald Examiner, LA Times San Diego division, moved to LA, got involved with the Herald Examiner, and ended up at Time Incorporated as a reporter for them. And they shunted me over to People magazine. And if there's a 10th circle of hell, it's People magazine. And what got me out of that was, I've been a reporter now for over 10 years. And just that career alone would be a good career for somebody to have had. And we were all in the office of the West Coast Bureau Chief, a woman I will not name. And a woman, we were all pitching stories we wanted to cover for the magazine. And the woman to my immediate right pitched a story about a new rape hotline that just opened up, a national rape hotline. This is 1984. And the woman, bureau chief, said, well, you know, rape's been very good to us. But do you have a new angle on the rape thing? And when I heard a woman say that, I think we all have a trap door under us and one pin keeping it in place. And when I heard that, the pin pull, I fell through. My turn was, I said, I don't really have anything. Went to my desk, got my stuff, and left, and never came back. I felt I had to get clean. And how I got the television is anyone's guess. But that was the end of my career in journalism. That's 10 years.
Now we could go. Let's go into the television part of your career, because it's a really an interesting career part, because it deals a lot.
Is this interesting at all? Is this all right?
What's it?
Yeah, people have no standards at all. It's like,
no. Well, speaking of no standards, we noticed that you work in animation, and in animation you were able to forge a career with such luminary shows as He-Man, She-Ra, Jace the Wheeled Warrior, and of course the ever-popular Captain Power.
You know, even in prison you get time off for good behavior. You know? You only crucified Christ once. Yes. Coming out of journalism, I knew I had to find some way of making money, and I love cartoons. I'm a cartoon nut. I have every little Looney Tunes, Warner Brothers cartoon ever put together. I like cartoons. And I like He-Man. It was a dopey show. It was a big, dumb, dopey show, but I liked it. And I knew a lot of guys who worked in animation. None of them were much of help to me in this process at all. So I ended up having to go to a store to find a copy of an animation script in Burbank, and bought it. It was a Spider-Woman script from a few years earlier, and learned the format and sent a spec script cold, which you're not supposed to do, to Filmation Studios. And they called me in for a meeting, surprised the hell out of me, and I pitched them a couple things, and they bought it, and they bought 3 or 4 more. Then they said, we're out of money for freelance scripts. And I go, well, that was a nice run. They said, well, do you want to come on staff? Yes. And I was on staff on He-Man, and staff on She-Ra. Then we left, Larry DiDio and I left Filmation to go over to DIC Animation, DIC for Do It Cheap. Did Jace, did Real Ghostbusters, and then blew up that career at the end of Real Ghostbusters. So I was out of the animation business, and then started working on live action. I keep blowing up my career in every area. Why I haven't blown it up in comics yet, I have no idea. I have to work harder.
Your books haven't come out yet, so.
True. This will help.
So now, since we've just come through our animation segment, let's go back into the television part again with the live action, where you did The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll.
Yes.
For Shelley Duvall's Nightmare Classics. And you were nominated for a Writers Guild Award for that, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct. Also a Cable Ace Award nomination. And what's instrumental about that TV movie is that it had Laura Dern and Anthony Andrews. And it shows the power of one script to change. Because prior to then, I'd been, an animation writer. I had sold one script to Twilight Zone, but that's it. It was not a great experience. But doing the Jekyll and Hyde script opened up a lot of doors suddenly, because it was something mainstream, it was something very literary, and it was a real writing challenge, because that story has been done so many times and done to death that when Shelley Duvall said, we want you to take a new angle, I said, where do you go? And I was so desperate to find the new angle, I went to the Huntington Museum, which had an exhibition of books going on, including Robert Louis Stevenson's original holographic manuscript for Jekyll and Hyde. And I said, can I please just look at the book, his actual, And they argue, my friends, just please, I'll wear gloves, whatever you want, just, you know. And they give me gloves. And I'm going through very carefully, not bothering the pages, and I see, just in the corner, he'd written the words, Hyde does not want. I thought, well, what does that mean, Hyde does not want? Does he want pizza? What does he not want? Then I realized, no. All the stories that I've done before about poor Dr. Jekyll put upon by Hyde, this awful, terrible thing. But Hyde had no desires of his own. He was acting out Jekyll's most innermost needs. His desires, his lusts, his fears, his jealousy. And suddenly I realized, no, Hyde is the one, even though he's a terrible person, being put upon by Jekyll. And suddenly that cracked the story and gave me a whole new approach on it, and ended up doing really, really well, getting me a lot of jobs after that. That's how I got onto other shows.
And speaking of other shows, you mentioned you did an episode of Twilight Zone, which wasn't a bad experience, yet you returned back to the Twilight Zone later on, I believe after the writer's strike, and you wound up being the story editor on that series. How did that come about?
Mark Sheldon, the original, the 86 Zone had kind of made it a point to get away from the moral stories that Rod liked to do, and I thought that was a shame, and they said as much. Later on they denied saying it, but they said it. And so when I did my episode, they kind of tried to write the moral out of it, and I was very unhappy about it. And then Mark Shelmerdine came along from MGM and from London Films, the guys who produced many, many great films. And he wanted to go back to that structure, the moral story. And I was the only one that he saw that fit the category. So he hired me and brought me on there, and it was a great opportunity to write whatever I wanted. I mean, they left me completely the frick alone. I got to write for like Eddie Albert and many, many other actors who were just at the top of their game, and to tell just stories. And it was a great, great experience. We started before the strike. The strike hit, we had to shut down for 6 months. And then we came back and finished up. What was interesting was that when they were running out of scripts causing the strike, they thought, well, let's go back to find an original Twilight Zone that we could redo. And they found one by George Clayton Johnson, which had a different ending originally. Game of Pool had a different ending. Mm-hmm. And they didn't want George to know, because he would ask for certain fees, where if they just used it without telling about it, he would just get a reuse fee. Somehow he found out. I have no idea how that happened. Phone calls happen, I'm talking in my sleep, who knows? But he found out, he was able to get the proper fee for it. But it was a great experience, and we did 30 episodes, and that was that.
And it was during that period of time that you became friends with Harlan Ellison?
Yeah, approximately, yeah. I had sort of always been on the periphery of Harlan's crowd, and he's looked at me the way a cat looks at a doorknob, you know? I know it means something, I'm not sure what. And I remember to this day, the first time I could see the crosshairs in his eyes, when he was about to give a talk in Pasadena, and I said, I just sold the Twilight Zone episode. And he focused on me for the first time, you know? And I did something that earned his respect. So, yeah, we became friends, and we hang out, and I did a roast for him. He was being sued in the case that was, I thought, inappropriate. And he was going to lose his house, so myself and Catherine organized a roast for him. We saved his house, let him finish up the case, and we just kind of became pals after that. Which is a dangerous thing, to be friends with Harlan Ellison. He will do things that make you want to go lay down for a while. He wanted to, I remember when faxes first came out, he wanted to get a fax, and said, we should both get a fax machine each, because we can bring the price down. I want a low price and a box of paper for free. So we go to this office supply place, and he begins working this poor son of a bitch for days, bringing him to tears, practically. And we get him down to the price, but not to the free box of paper. Remember the rolls of paper they used to have? Yeah. Those. And finally, Harlan calls me up and says, we're going to go back today. I want you to bring a check made out to both machines to the exact amount we want to spend, and not a dime more. Bring it today, and bring Catherine with you, with my wife at the time. And so we go, we meet Harlan there at the store. He says, I got the check yet? Give me the check. And walk around the block 3 times. Okay. You learn out the question after a while, you just do. So we walk around the block 3 times, come back, we have the fax machines, the price we want to pay, and we have the box of free paper. And the guy's looking at me really strange. So we're looking this stuff up in the car, and I'm saying, Harlan, what did you tell him? Nothing, doesn't matter, we have the paper, let's go, come on, go. What did you tell him? I said that your wife was this harridan, this shrewd, this terrible person, and she made you make out this check for what we should be spending. And if we didn't get everything we wanted for that amount of money, plus the paper, she would make your life a living hell for the rest of your life. I said, Harlan, this is the block from my house. I can't go back here again. I said, you don't have to, you got the fax machine. Well, thank you for bringing that up.
No, that's fine. Well, since we went from that story, I can also now follow, as we follow the path of your career, you worked on other exciting projects. Even though it's just one episode, I thought it was worth mentioning. Texas Walker, Texas Ranger. You did an episode of that. Texas Ranger fans, you know?
What did I ever do to you?
And this is a really interesting fact I found out. You worked on several episodes of Murder, She Wrote. And it's true, you were responsible for moving Jessica Fletcher from Cabot Cove to New York City.
Partly. I did make her a teacher that season. I actually was brought on as a writer-producer on Murder, She Wrote by David Mosinger, with whom I worked on Jake and the Fat Man. I'm sorry. Sometime before. And he was very good. We also went on to Walker, Texas Ranger after he went screaming for Murder, She Wrote. Angela liked the fact that I wrote her as a working writer, not as just going to places and walking around and looking impressive. And I wanted to make her a teacher, put her in a college environment teaching writing, which got her an opportunity to talk about writing. And it was a great opportunity, and I got to write some cool stuff. I was on the lot one day and saw the old Psycho mansion, which is still there, the Bates Motel in the Psycho building. And wouldn't it be cool if she wrote a story, a novel, and stories about Universal optioning Jessica Fletcher's novel, and they bring her out, and there's a murder in the Psycho house. And we shot that.
Oh, that's great.
And I got to go inside the Psycho house, and it's just creepy as hell. Which is inside pretty much the same. The furniture was stripped out, but the walls are the same. It was just a creepy experience.
Excellent. And this brings us now to one of the first project that you produced, wrote, and also created. And I think a lot of people here know about it, which is Babylon 5. And now I need you to connect the dots from Captain Power to Babylon 5.
It's a much cleaner line than you might think. Captain Power, how many have seen Captain Power? I'm so sorry. No, it was a fine show, as much as it could be. And it was kind of a proof of concept for doing a story with an arc, and a lot of the guys who did the CGI, who also worked on Captain Power. They came on the Babylon 5. I met Sean Copeland and Doug Netter and Ron Thornton and all the guys. John Accarelli, who would then go on to work for us in Babylon 5. And it was there that I saw, I've been on a number of different shows now and saw how much waste there was in television. 30% of any budget of a TV show, in my view, goes to waste from lack of preparation and forethought. There has to be a smarter way of doing this. There has to be a way to do a show responsibly. And part of the challenge was coming up with a show that could do that. And I designed Babylon 5 to be responsible financially. And my theory being that if you can do a show for cost and come in under budget every year, they'll leave you alone a lot more than if you're over budget making them crazy. And you've been on the other side of that desk, you know that conversation. Yeah. And sure enough, on B5, we came in under budget every year. We only had 18 days of serious overtime out of 110 episodes in 5 TV movies. And everyone's had a forced call an actor. And people we shot 12-hour days, people had home lives, they could go home and see their families. We wrapped at 7 o'clock most days. So just from a producerial standpoint, it was a great experience. The writing side is off the hook. Yeah.
And define off the hook for a writing experience.
I I told a lot of stories. Again, I do believe, well, if you leave me the fuck alone. And Warner stopped giving us notes after episode 2 of year 2. So I could again write pretty much anything that I wanted to. And I wrote 91 out of 110 episodes, which is a record that's never been beaten before or since. And to create your own universe, to create characters and a world and looks and technology is something that only comes into your life once or twice if you're lucky. And this is just a great opportunity. Dan DiDio killed me. There's pictures you can look at me before, B5, and after. You can see what this thing did to me. Because when you're working on a show, you're show running a show. You're writing one episode, prepping the next, shooting the next, editing the next, and posting and delivering the next, all at the same time. So you're going from a meeting about one script, in the morning, to episode 4 later on the day, to the costume design thing for episode 2, and you have to kind of keep it straight in your head. And when you're making up a universe as you go, you kind of have to be able to explain what you have in mind in a timely fashion. So it was a great experience, and I got to, we got the Hugo Award twice, which is a great thing. As a kid, I used to steal books. Let me explain that for a second. Okay, so any kids in the audience. I was poor. We were very poor growing up, and I couldn't afford to buy books. So what I would do is I would go to these liquor stores and stuff where they had spinner racks and paperback novels, and I would look for Hugo winner on the cover to know which ones to buy, well, to borrow. And I would, I made blind spots with the mirrors in these stores. I could put on my coat and get out of there. And I would read them like this, not breaking the spine. Then when I was done, I would put it down and press it between textbooks and bring it back to the store, put it back on the spinner rack, terrified that somebody would catch me and thinking, would they believe I was putting it back? No. So coming from that point of view to actually receive not just one but 2 Hugo Awards, it's any science fiction fan's wet dream. It was just the pinnacle of that part of my life.
That's great. That's great. And then we can move on to the next show that you also wound up writing and creating as well, which is Jeremiah.
Yes.
Now, that experience, how does that compare to your Babylon 5 experience? I could ask anything.
Not so good. Not so good. I was caught in the switches between MGM and Showtime. How many have seen Jeremiah? It's a very uneven show because Showtime wanted a really hard-edged, dark, mean, foul-mouthed, post-apocalyptic show. MGM wanted a cute, fuzzy, warm-hearted, bunny rabbit-eared, post-apocalyptic show. Those two don't dine at the same table. And so I was constantly caught between the 2 different sides, and at one point I tried to take my name off the show because they were interfering with me. We had one executive who kept sending up women he was trying to get horizontal with for bit parts in the show, and when I finally figured out what the hell was going on, I would have a PA at the airport waiting for them. And with a return ticket and X number of dollars, just go, just leave, and one of our cast members decided it was his show, he was running the show, and we had endless battles. It was not a good experience. I did 2 seasons of that, and just wanted to kill myself. By the time I was done, it was just so wretched, so awful, that I literally said, I worked in television nonstop since 85, 86, until 2002. That's a pretty good run to work nonstop. I said, I need a friggin' break after working with these people. And said, I'm blowing up my career again. I'm blowing up television, and I'll see what happens next.
Which takes us to, I think, which we'd like to think is one of your high points as well, The Changeling.
Yeah.
Explain to how that came about, and how that script wound into Clint Eastwood's hands and wound up becoming a movie.
I had come across the story many years earlier working as a reporter, and I tried several times over the years to try and make that story work. I didn't have the tools I needed. One thing every writer does after a while is you begin acquiring tools for your toolbox. And you accumulate abilities and techniques and cheats and ways of telling a story that you didn't have 6 months earlier. And I didn't have the tools I needed to tell that story years earlier. And after being out of television for almost 5 years. I said, I'm going to try one more time on this story. And I finally had the tools I needed to crack it and make it work. And gave it to my agent, my film agent, blind. Well, he's not blind. I didn't tell him it was coming in. Just landed on his desk one morning and walked in the door. And he read it, loved it, got it to Ron Howard, who bought it immediately. Gave it to Angelina Jolie, who signed on immediately. Gave it to Clint Eastwood, who said, absolutely, I'll do this, I want no changes. And this thing set a land speed record for going from script to production.
Amazing. And
suddenly, I was this guy. I went from being a TV writer that no one knew about in the film industry to being suddenly, quote, an A-list writer, which was the goddamnedest transition I'd ever been a part of. Because they would call me in for these meetings at the studios, and they would say, who are you? Where did you come from? And where did you learn to want to write like this? You know? My favorite meeting though was I went into a studio meeting with a very important executive in Hollywood. And I walk in and there's this long conference table and he's at the far end and along the table are flunkies, plenipotentiaries, intermediaries, aides, you know, go-to guys, yes men, toadies, you know, all of them. And him at the end. And he starts going into this whole thing. I was the president of Paramount for 10 years. I ran Sony for 4. I was head of production for this studio. I ran that studio for 5 years. I ran this studio for 2 years. Da 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 da. And he finishes up, waits for my response. And I say, so what you're saying is you can't hold a job. The flunkies, the plenipotentiaries, the aides, and yes men and toadies went white. This guy started laughing his ass off and adopted me and gave me an assignment. It was the funniest goddamn thing. No one ever talked to him like that before, I guess, you know? So it was really a bizarre experience.
Well, there you are. So now you're conquering film, you're conquering television with Babylon 5, animation with Jason the Wheeled Warrior.
Will you let me go, Jason the Wheeled Warriors?
I completely forgot about that.
I want to come over there. It's not going to be pretty.
So therefore, it feels like you have to climb the biggest hurdle of them all, the most prestigious of all mediums, comic books. Exactly. Let's get right. That's why we're here, guys. Now, have you always been a fan of comics? And what made you decide to actually get involved in comics? Obviously, it doesn't pay on that same scale of that last check you received. so therefore, why comics?
I love comics. I've always loved comics. As a kid, you know, I collected them. They taught me what passes my sense of morality. They taught me how to tell stories. What I know about, you know, ethics and morality, I learned from Superman. And in fact, early on, I managed to, at a very young age, trade really well and collected complete runs from issue #1 of X-Men and Spider-Man and Thor, a bunch of really great golden age DC comics, and the first appearance of Flash, and the first appearance of Green Lantern. It has a wonderful collection, it's terrific. And I was like age 13 or 14, my grades fell. And my father blamed the comics for this and destroyed all of them in front of me, just tore them all up, every single one of them. And I'm still pissed off. It took me years to rebuild that collection. So I've always been a reader of comics. And I did like 1 or 2 small ones. First thing I read was the Teen Titans Spotlight for you guys. And then one other one. And then Joe Quesada came to me and said, this is back after the Marvel bankruptcy, and they were in serious trouble. And they needed something to move the dial, something they could, you know say this is an event, whatever that means. And they came to me, which seems to say they were picking the wrong guy. But nonetheless, they said, do you want to take over Spider-Man? And I said, yeah. And then went on to do 74-issue run on that character, and it was the best time. It was just terrific because when you had someone like that to play with, it's just a great opportunity. And then did some more stuff at Marvel, and then ended up with you in bed together.
Exactly.
just once.
And I've always known, and we knew about your interest in love of Superman just from our own conversations. And then, when you get the opportunity to write Superman Earth 1, how do you approach that differently because you know so much about Superman, how do you come at that with a fresh set of eyes when his character is so ingrained in your psyche on so many levels?
I think you have to, again, ask the next logical question. That's what led me to the question of, well, planets don't just blow up one day. Could this have been a hit? This have been an extermination plot. And also in terms of the character, it dawned on me, this is someone who would really have lived his life alone. If he figured out early on that he was not one of us, what solitude is there in that? And I have Asperger's. I have a hard time connecting to other people as this membrane between me and fun. And attach that to this character. And let's feel that isolation. And it's also because the guy who could do anything he wanted to do and he'd have any career he wants. And I wanted to sort of show the options of what he had, and then have him do the one thing that would pay him the least, which is being a reporter, and bring my own background as a reporter to the game. And oddly, in the next volume of Superman, Earth 1, I've actually transplanted a lot of my own background onto him. Because as a kid, I got beat up all the time because I was always the new kid. There was a time, I was living in Matawan, New Jersey, which is a very, white bread area, had a very funny name. I was a new kid. I got beat up literally every day for a school year. And I learned after a while not to stick out. I learned to fade into the background and began working hard to always get a C, never more than that. And this helped me kind of hide among the other students. And when I was aimed just right to get my grades where they needed to be. And this one particular year, I screwed up, I got sick, I missed a couple tests, and I failed the class. I had to do summer school at a different school. They bust me out. And this were all the slow kids tend to go, the short bus, And they were giving out IQ tests. I thought, this is a different school, they don't know me, I'm just curious. I'm not going to hold back, I want to know for myself. So I did the IQ, filled it all out. Came in the next day, and they called me to the principal's office. And said, you cheated on this test. We want to know how you did this. Because I didn't, I swear to God. They made me do it again on a different test. And I had, and this is like I was 15, I had what they say, a genius level IQ. I had a reading capacity of a college graduate. And they said, what the hell are you doing here? I said, well, I'll tell them the truth. I didn't want to get hit. I was getting beat up all the time. And they ratted me out to the school, which put me in this dance class suddenly. And fortunately, we moved again. I got out of that. It was just like the worst experience. So I bring that to Superman. He keeps a steady C average. We see him in the second book at a party where he just can't get past the wall between him and other people. And so I mentioned McFun, I was just kidding. There's a lot of me in that.
We're going to cover Watchmen in a second, hold the fire.
and just, one last thing on Superman, some of you may know this story, and I apologize if you do already, but I was at Chicago Comic-Con back in the late 90s. Back when the Italian who ran Chicago Comic-Con for many years? The guy who ran Comic-Con in San Diego, Chicago.
The Wizard one?
Yeah.
Scarab Shape?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And I was standing in the dealer's room, and like an aisle like this, and I hear someone yell, "Stop him!" And some guy who just ripped off a bunch of artwork comes running this way. And the entire crowd, like the Red Sea, they parted, And he's coming this way, he's in his 20s, big, tall guy. And I break the motherfucker down. I tackle him and just bam, like a gazelle. And me and the guy who ran the booth held him for the cops to show up. Later on, the guy who ran the convention, everyone were holding him, and comes over and says, "The guy who made 915 just captured you." I was like, fuck you. And afterward, he says, why did you do that? You could have been seriously hurt. This is a sailor, it turned out, who was really, And I pointed to where I was standing under a 10-foot tall cutout of Superman. So how could I stand here in front of him and do nothing?
Excellent. Well then, let's go next to the project that you're working on right in front of you now, which is Before Watchmen. Now, what we don't know is that basically we were sitting in the meeting with a number of writers, and Joe had signed on to do Dr. Manhattan, and that was the first one. And then during the course of the meeting, you actually took on the Night Owl project as well. And let me go into some of the questions for you. How did you feel about stepping into this and getting caught up in all the Watchmen discussion? And how do you approach this particular book when there's so much noise around it?
I think you have to push the noise out of your head. You must approach the work with clean hands and composure. And to me, these are terrific characters. The reason that they have endured is that they are so well constructed. And to let them sit fallow for so long was, I think, a testament to DC's patience. That after 25 years, you said, out of respect, we won't go there again. Even though I know you guys went back to Alan, and when you offered him ownership of the characters, you offered him enough money to dim the lights at DC's offices for a week to, to do something. And so when you're a writer, you look for who is the story about. And I love the idea of Dr. Manhattan and Night Owl, because on the one hand, you have the most powerful character in the Watchmen universe, and then arguably one of the least powerful characters, but also one of the most naive in his way. And what's fun about them, because Dr. Manhattan sees past, present, future all as one moment, his feeling is all the choices he can make, he's already made. Everything that could be done has already been done. And despite his power, there's a certain amount of almost conditioned helplessness that goes with that. He can see everything and thinks he can't do anything. Whereas Night Owl can only see what's in front of him, his own dreams and ambitions, and thinks he can do anything. And that seesaw, to me, was really compelling. And I know how to tell that story. I know what to do with that. So when we had the meeting in New York and he became available, I just grabbed him with both hands and wouldn't let go. And for those of you who were not there, which is probably most of you, I wish I could convey to you the respect and the dedication to storytelling of everyone who was there, and the characters, from Brian Azarel to Len Wein to Darwin Cook to everybody. And we all had copies of the Watchmen book in front of us. When somebody would raise a question, we'd all be flipping through like Bible class, Shit. Genesis 1:1, what the hell? And we're so rigorous and careful to pay attention, to be respectful to the original project. And I've now seen a lot of the script work, I've seen some of the artwork, and it is, the Jay Lee stuff that is being done on Ozymandias is some of the best artwork I've ever seen in any book, anywhere, at any time. It is that good. The Kubers are doing an amazing job on Night Owl. Adam Hughes is doing a great job on Dr. Manhattan. It's just been a terrific, it's going to be a great series of books, because everyone in that room is bringing their A game, because we know that if we do this wrong, there will be torches and pitchforks and lichtenstein in the mob. So simple survival alone dictates we have to do this really freaking well, or we're going to die. And rightly so.
Yes. Well, that sounds like a perfect spot for us to take some questions from the audience. Do we have any questions from the audience? Let's start right here.
Sure, I'll take pertinent questions. Tell us a what? A fairy tale. I haven't got a fairy tale offhand. I can tell you a funny story. I recently was having work done on my house. Trust me, this goes somewhere. And I had this cabana / pavilion. I'm in the valley. I always wanted an ocean view. So I bought this painter to do a mural on this big ass wall of an ocean view. And she comes in and says, do you want people on the beach? No. Do you want boats? No, it's a private beach. I don't see boats. People swimming? No, the sharks ate them. No people. I just want water, and I want a beach, some scrub. Is there anything else at all you want on this? I said, a zombie walking out of the water. And she didn't want to paint the zombie without paying you, so paint me a goddamn zombie, you know. So she finishes the mural, and I said I wanted it over here on the far right side where the curve is, and she put it over here. Oh, well, fuck, you know, but at least she got it done, you know. So I went to do my stuff, went to bed, came back the next day to feed the cats outside, and noticed it was 5 inches to the right. The zombie was over here, not over here. I must be wrong. I must be misremembering where the zombie was because it can't have just moved. I've seen that in my gallery. It didn't end well for anybody. So I put it on my head, and the next day, it's now over here. What I found out was that she was coming in at night, in the dead of night, and erasing the other one, and repainting it. She marched this son of a bitch clear across the wall to where I finally wanted it. And just to add insult to injury, because she didn't want to paint it in the first place, it looks like me. I have a picture. I have a picture. While you come up with your next question, or the next question, I'll find it for you. You tell me if this is real. Next question.
Oh, next question. Let's go right over there. Yes.
I love all your stuff on Thor. That's one of my favorite things you've done. And I was wondering what inspired you to have the interaction between the Asgardians and the local town stars. That's some of my favorite stuff on that.
Thank you. Looking for the zombie picture. It's here. I swear to God, it's here. Well, if you look at mythology as it was crafted, you know, hundreds of years ago, you would often find gods walking along, here it is, walking alongside with mortals. That was the whole wonder of mythology, was that you could be out in the corner. Now, am I lying?
It's really good, guys.
It's a dead zombie Joe walking out. And it's the contrast between mortals and gods that makes, on the one hand, makes a god more of a god, but also at the same time makes him more human. I thought, wouldn't it be great to put this thing in Oklahoma? Which when I first said it to Marvel, they said, I'm out of your mind. Asgard and Oklahoma, flat, 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 Asgard, flat, 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 you know? And it worked. And the interface of gods and men, which is what all religion is based on, was fascinating to see the Asgardians at a town hall meeting in the middle of this little tiny town where you have one side is all people like in hats and jackets, and this side is all Asgardians, see with big costumes and shields and swords, talking about indoor plumbing. And the mayor asking, well, don't you have indoor plumbing in Asgard? Oh no, we just throw it over the walls. The goats love it. The frost giants not so much. And it's just, you want to take something and turn it upside down. That's the fun of it. That's what makes it interesting.
Next question. Right on the aisle.
Joe?
Yes?
There's a certain theme that always pops up in your storytelling, the theme of circular events, such as the conclusion to Rising Stars, Loki going back in time to create Loki, and David Gray talking to his young self. Why do you always use the circular theme in stories?
I'm a circle jerk. That's all you're going to get to.
Let's move on quickly. Right over there. Yes.
I've been to a number of your panels. I've been to writing workshops. I've even gone to other panels that interested me. I discovered you were there when I first was a strong female role model.
So you have no standards at all. You'll see me anywhere.
I wrote on that was a lot of work in Pat and Howard. I realized necessarily for an adult just how much influence I had. And I have a battery, but I have simple emotions drafting, it's very difficult to write. So when I would do writing with my friends, it would almost be oral, completely improvised. When I got to a part of it where I had actually writing for comics, it's really, really great. And I was wondering if you had an idea of just how many, like, if you ever see somebody who you know you've had some good influence and you go to their class.
I do hear from them on occasion. It's deeply gratifying because anyone who writes or is in the arts in any way, you do it for the purpose of touching another person. And to your question about the writing, you're right. For the first part of your career, is just pumping out all the crap in your system, and just accept that the first stuff you're going to write is just going to be shit. It just will. You know. The question is getting over it in time and relaxing. Isaac Asimov, who was working with his own questions and problems with style, and couldn't quite crack it, was talking to his agent one day about this problem, and his agent said, "Do you know how Hemingway would write The Sun Rose in the Morning?" And Isaac said, "How? The sun rose in the morning?" You just say it. Writing is nothing more or less than talking on the page. And the more you can unlearn the bad habits of what you think writing is, and just relax and say it. As most writers that I know, they talk the way they write the way they talk. And so I try and carry that message out, and then beyond that, in terms of the work that I do, I'm going to dust eventually, particularly after this now.